Hello guys, and welcome once again to another YouTube video. If you haven't subscribed to this channel, kindly subscribe to this channel, like and comment. So today's video is going to be on how to properly select your CISD when trading T-Trace fractal model. The first thing you have to consider is how CISD is formed. So in a bullish scenario, when we get a series of down close candle into our point of interest that gets closed by a bullish series of candle, then that becomes our change in state of delivery. So the first rule of engagement is that your change in state of delivery should be in a form of a V shape for a bullish scenario. And if it is a bearish scenario, then it will be vice versa. So it will be an A shape. That is the first rule of engagement. The second rule of engagement is that your CISD should be formed by a sharp movement in and out. So if you look at the example on the screen, you could see that the series of down close candle came to the point of interest and then they got closed by the series of bullish candles, and we had a CISD that formed. Now, why is this CISD valid? It is valid because it formed a nice V-shaped, and also it formed a nice opened. You could see that the CISD was opened. It wasn't closed, it was opened, right? So the next thing we are going to look at is an example of a CISD that is not considered valid. So when price comes to your point of interest where you want to see a CISD form, and then it delays before forming that CISD. For example, looking at this, you could see that when the series of down close candle came to our point of interest, price delayed before it closed over them. So this is an example of an invalid CISD when price consolidate and waste time to form that CISD. What we want to see is that for us to consider the CISD as valid, for our T-Trace setup to be valid, we want that CISD to be a sharp movement in and out, and that will usually be in a V shape. But when we come to that point of interest and then we delay, so you could see that here we came down to this point of interest and then we delayed before finally closing over. That is price telling you that it's not really willing to be bullish. If price is willing to be bullish, then it would have closed immediately, like I showed you in the first picture, right? So the next thing that we are going to look at is we are going to look at some examples of valid CISD versus invalid CISD. In this example, right, why was the reason why I traded C2? This was the 4-hour C2 candle, and the reason why I took that trade was because of the nice sharp movement in and out that we formed down here. So you could see that this series of down close candle came to my point of interest, which was a 4-hour fair value gap, and then we closed over immediately. So I positioned myself, and then you could see how nicely the trade was. Now, the reason why I was so confident that this trade was going to deliver is because of the sharp movement in and out that I had over here, right? So for you to even trade your third candle, you first have to make sure that your C2, right, which is also known as your reversal candle, is formed by a sharp movement in and out. And immediately it forms that way, then you are confident that price is willing to deliver, and then you can position yourself when the third candle opens. Here is a proof that I actually took that trade. So you can see that I took the trade over here and then I closed over here. Do you get it? And before I continue, if you haven't subscribed to this channel, kindly subscribe to the channel, like, and also comment. Thank you. Now, for this example, I want you to pay keen attention to it, right? So we could see that this was our candle too, right? And we could see how nicely the V-shaped formed. And also, if you paid attention to the beginning of the video, you can go back and listen very carefully. I said that I want the CISD to form a nice sharp movement in and out, which usually leaves a V shape for a bullish scenario, and also it should be opened. So you could see that when we had that C2 reversal, you could see how nicely our V shape formed, and also it was opened, right? So that is price telling me that I want to deliver bullish to target these liquidity over here, right? Now the third candle opened over here, right? And when the third candle opened, let us compare these two CISD together. And the reason why, if you were to take your entry over here, you would have got stop out. So you could clearly see that we tag a point of interest, which if you want a CISD to form, you want it to tag a point of interest, right? A PD array, or you want it to come down and tag another CISD and form a proportion block. So most of you would have gotten stop out over here, right? So we could see that we closed over, but look at how the CISD formed. You could see that it wasn't opened. It wasn't a nice movement in and out, or it was a nice movement in and out though, but this is not a V shape. Compare it to this. You could see how this V shape formed, and you could see that when we formed this V shape, this became our protected low. And if you were to enter over here, you could see that price delivered and price didn't take you out, right? An example is even this V shape that CISD that we formed over here. Although we formed that sharp movement in and out over here, price target and then be delivered, right? So I don't really want my CISD to form this way, especially my C2 where we raid liquidity and your CISD forms this way. It is better for you to wait. We are going to look at more example in the next slide. So let us look at this example, right? So we could clearly see that for some people, when we had this CISD that got formed over here, if I'm to zoom out for you to see, you could see that we formed this CISD, but it wasn't opened. Compare this CISD, right, to this CISD. Look at how nicely we formed it, right? We formed a nice movement inside and outside, and it also formed a nice V shape, and it was also opened, right? Compare this to this, you could see that the reason why price didn't continue from here is because of how this CISD formed. But look at how this price moved when we had that nice movement, right? When we had that nice movement, look at how price moved and delivered to our sell side liquidity. So there is more example of valid CISD, right? So we could see that we had a sharp movement in and out, which was opened. And then looking at here too, you could clearly see that this one wasn't really opened. This CISD wasn't really open. So we came back, we raided it, and then we formed an opened CISD sharp movement in and out, and it was also opened. And then we moved from there, right? So you should always look at the CISD that formed, especially on the 15-minute time frame and the 5-minute time frame when you're taking entries on them. You should make sure that they are sharp movement in and out and they are also opened. So another example is this one. You can see how nicely the CISD formed and how opened it was, and then price delivered. Let us take a look at this CISD and why this CISD was invalid. So you could clearly see that when we had that down close series of down close candle into our point of interest, look at how price delayed before price went up, right? At the end, this price didn't deliver. It came down and then it failed, because if price wanted to be bullish, it should have been a sharp movement in and out, right? At this point, if you haven't liked this video, if you haven't subscribed, kindly subscribe before you continue. Thank you. Now we are going to look at how you can apply whatever I have explained to trade from the daily time frame, the 4-hour time frame, and the 15-minute time frame, right? Now, price is fractal, right? Time is fractal or whatever. So you can apply the same rule to the 5-minute time frame, right? These rules usually work for the 15-minute and the 5-minute time frame, right? So you could clearly see that on this daily time frame, we raided external range liquidity, and when we take external range liquidity, our next target is going to be internal range liquidity, right? But we just don't trade immediately from there. We want to first get our we want to get a perfect C2 closure, right? And when we get a perfect C2 closure, then we can focus on trading the third day, right? So here we had that perfect C2 closure, which of course, if you do not understand, don't be lazy. Go to the playlist, start from the beginning, watch everything. You get to understand what a perfect C2 closure is. So we had that perfect C2 closure. So we want to focus on trading the third day. And to trade the third day, you go to the 4-hour time frame, right? So on the 4-hour time frame, we could see that when the third candle opened, we had a nice fair value gap that the 4-hour C2 left, right? And we could clearly see that we on the 4-hour time frame too, like I always explain in my videos and in my Telegram channel, which if you're not part of it, you can check the description and then you can join. You could clearly see that we had a perfect C2 closure over here on the 4-hour time frame too. So because that we had that perfect C2 closure, we can focus on trading this candle to our draw on liquidity, right? And now when we get a perfect C2 closure on the 4-hour time frame, what do we want to see on the 15-minute time frame? That is when the first lesson or the first picture that I show you come in. We want to see a sharp movement in and out that forms a CISD for this. So this is going to be a bearish scenario, which means that the CISD must be opened and also must be in the form of an A shape, right? So we go to the 15-minute time frame. You could see that we had that CISD form over here, right? And you could see the series of up close candle went into our fair value gap, and then we closed over by this down close candle. We formed our CISD, which was nice movement in and out, and it was also opened, and it was also an A-shaped, right? So we can position ourselves and trade the third candle since we've gotten a nice A-shaped CISD. So if it was to be a berry scenario, to be a nice V shape opened one. So look at how the third candle opened. It opened, and then for a CISD to form, we want it to tag a point of interest, which is raid an old swing high or swing low, or tag a fair value gap, or tag another CISD and form a proportion draw, right? So we could see that price came to this 15-minute FEG, and look at how we formed that C-tele candle too. We had a nice A shape, and it was also opened, and you could see how I positioned myself and how price delivered to our draw on liquidity, right? So the reason why I was so confident is what I have explained. We are going to look at our second example. So for this second example, I've already taught how to find daily buyers on this YouTube channel, but it looks as if most of you didn't watch it. So for you to be very good at daily buyers, I will leave the link in the description, and I will also tag it in the video. Kindly click on it and go and watch to understand how to find daily buyers, and come back to this video. So we could clearly see that if price indeed wanted to go bullish, right here, there is a bullish FEG. So if price wants to go bullish, then we expect price to come to this FEG after raiding. Did it raid any external range liquidity? So let's say this liquidity was raided, or there was some kind of SMT over here. But when price came, we could see that when price tagged our FEG, we didn't get a perfect candle closure when price tagged it over here. Even if we were to consider this candle, it wasn't a perfect candle to closure because we didn't close inside this candle's range. And this one too, we didn't close inside this candle's range. And if you've been watching my video, I said that if you don't get a perfect C2 closure, then you wait for your third candle, right? And you could see that the third candle also failed to expand. So you should start questioning yourself. So we could see that when this fourth candle came, we disrespected the FEG and we formed an inversion fair value gap. And also there is kind of a C2 closure over here, right? Now, due to that C2 closure that we formed over here and the FEG that we disrespected, it is always best to wait for price to come all the way up, to come and do what, to come and tag this and then deliver, right? But then why was I confident that this third candle was just going to deliver straight to our draw on liquidity? It all comes down to how it opened on the 4-hour time frame. So if you look at the 4-hour time frame, you could see that we had this movement in and out. We left a fair value gap, and of course you have to always make sure that your 4-hour time frame is clear, right? And when the 4-hour time frame is clear, you'll be seeing fair value gaps and those kind of things. And then we had this up close candle, right, that got closed over. We formed a CISD over here, and for this CISD that we also formed, we had our C2 closure over here, right? So we will be trading this third candle. Now let's go to the 15-minute time frame to look at how it's printed. So on the 15-minute time frame, you could see that we had a sharp movement in and out, and it was also opened. You could see how opened it was, and it is an A-shaped. So I even traded the C2 because of how it's formed, and then that was how we delivered. So thank you for watching. Share it with your friends, and let us all attain profitability together. And this doesn't apply to only the 15 minutes. You can also apply to the 5-minute time frame. And whenever you take a trade and it works, tag me on your social media, tag me in the Telegram group. Thank you for watching.